We have with me Shri Arun Anand, a veteran writer, a veteran journalist. He has been a senior editorial journalist for nearly 2 decades with many prestigious publishing houses and media. He has done more than 12 books on various issues and many of them around RSS. He is a founder editor of research and reference site called The Nationalist View. He has a YouTube with the same name and is also consultant to the print. And one of his books is about Ram Mandir. As we know, today is a very important day. It's 6th December. It's important because this was the beginning of the making of the Ram temple in a physical form with the destruction of Babri Dhancha structure. And it is also very important and sacred day for us because it is a Mahaparinirvan Din for Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. The book we are going to discuss today is the book, The Forgotten History of India. I could also call it the hidden pages of history, because what Arun Anandji has done is he has picked up issues which are not generally discussed in history books, not even known, which have been either brushed aside or we simply are not aware of them. So with such an eye that he has gone into details of many of the incidents that have actually been very important in making of the current Bharat what it is. For example, his first article is about First Amendment to Indian Constitution, which is about freedom of expression, which was piloted by Pandit Nehru after he got a serious setback when he tried to ban organizer and also tried to imprison its editor, K.R. Malkani. So this was the beginning of the amendment. This was the beginning of the first sign of the dictatorship, which ended up in emergency in 1975. He has got many topics. This book contains about 5 years of his writings, and he is a very regular columnist. And for example, he has talked about people who are not very well known because RSS leaders or senior workers don't have any public profile. There is no publicity around their work, nor is there any effort to market them. So the people he has covered are Dattopant Thengdi, who was the founder of Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, Swadeshi Jagran Manch, and Bharatiya Kisan Union, of which ABVP and Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh happen to be the largest organizations in those particular segments. He writes about Ashok Singhal, who was, I could say, the Navik, the main person behind the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. And he breathed his last thinking about Ram Mandir. He talks about Deen Dayal Upadhyay, the person whose philosophy today is the guiding principle of BJP and who died very young. In fact, he was killed. He talks about Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. He talks about Thakur Ram Singh, who worked in a very big, very courageous manner in Jammu Kashmir, in Punjab, in Northeast, and also was founder of Itihas Sankalan Samiti, which changed the course of our historical narrative. He talks about Nanak Deshmukh. He talks about Lakshmi Bai Kelkar, the founder of Rashtriya Sevika Samiti, and he talks about Maharaja Hari Singh. Then he has articles about unknown dimensions of RSS work. He talks of two organizations which are huge, which have impacted history, like Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh and the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram. He has many articles about Savarkar. We will not touch Savarkar today because Savarkar is a topic of discussion since many months because of two famous books on him, one by Vikram and one by Uday Mahurkarji. He also writes about Indo-China conflict in a detailed manner. He has highlighted RSS role during freedom struggle, during emergency, and also in defending Harmandir Sahib during 47-48. And he has talked about Dr. Ambedkar and the relation of RSS, and he has many articles on Ram Mandir. With this in mind, I thought that perhaps with such a wide spectrum of topics he has covered, I would rather speak about two topics which are important for today's December 6th. One is about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's relation with RSS, his views about Hindutva and Hindu Dharma and the Sanatan Dharma, and the reason for his conversion, though that is not part of the book, but since we are talking with a knowledgeable author, we would as well talk about it. And we'll also talk about Ram Mandir, where he has, in one particular article, he has talked about 10 unknown people who sacrifice their lives for Ram Mandir. So it's a very good mix of topics he has covered, and also very important for us to know about things that actually shaped the history of India post-independence. With this rather long introduction, I welcome Arun Anand ji. Namaskar, Arun ji. Your mic is off, so could you please switch on the mic?
Ji, namaste.
So before we move ahead to what I have said, if you would like to add anything to what I have said about the book?
मुझे लगता है, I think you have been very gracious and you have actually done the thing which I should have been doing. So thanks to you. And the only thing which I want to add is that when the readers would look at it, it might look, a very diverse kind of collection of or diverse kind of spread, ranging from China to Ram Mandir, but there has to be a common connect also. So the common connect is basically that that set of civilizational values, basically, which has kept our civilization alive, and so they got manifested in most of these stories. So whether these were the unsung heroes of Ram Janmabhoomi movement, and also, as you rightly said, that one key reason for doing this book was that RSS is an integral part of Indian history, especially recent Indian history since its inception. It has had a huge, so it has a huge impact on the developments in the country, the polity, the social fabric, and that has not been recorded somehow. So RSS has been looked at from a tunnel vision, and that tunnel vision is basically that it is a Hindu militant organization, and it has been looked at largely from Hindu and Muslim perspective, the Hindu-Muslim divide perspective. And so I think justice has to be done to RSS, and I believe RSS also has, in a way, kind of, I would say, because you have written so extensively on RSS, I think you're the best chronicler of RSS in this country right now. And they use this term Prasiddhi Parang Mukta. For the viewers, I would translate it. It's broadly basically they shun away from publicity. या जिसे आप कहते हैं कि मंच, माला और माइक, अगर मैं बड़ी देसी भाषा में कहूँ, इन तीनों से दूर रहना है. So they have done that, but I think it is time also to talk about their contribution. And it is not because the RSS wants to take credit or RSS. It's important to basically chronicle that, and it is important to document that for future generations to come, because now we are fighting a battle of narratives. And in battle of narratives, if what the a section of the what you call intelligentsia, so-called intelligentsia, is doing, which has got loaded motives. So what they are doing, they are turning rumors into gossips and gossips into facts. So जैसे मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल आपको देता हूँ कि इरफान हबीब ने राम जन्मभूमि के बारे में बहुत सारी बातें कही कि वो और जो फैक्चुअली करेक्ट नहीं थी. उन्होंने रेफरेंस अपने पिताजी की किताब का दे दिया, ठीक है, और इरफान हबीब की किताब का 50 PhDs जो है उसमें रेफरेंस हो गया. तो जो एक बिना रेफरेंस का फैक्ट है, वो अपने आप में एक रेफरेंस पॉइंट के तौर पे एस्टैब्लिश हो गया.
इसको कहते हैं ना सर्कुलर आर्गुमेंट.
जी जी जी,
वो कोट किया आपने, मुझे कोट किया और वो सच बन.
हाँ, सो दिस इज व्हाट आई वांटेड टू. तो मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ा सा ये इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसऑनेस्टी को चैलेंज करने का और एक इंटेलेक्चुअल ऑनेस्टी का जो है वो उसको उसके माध्यम से भी एक जो है, दिस इज आल्सो अनदर रीजन फॉर पुटिंग दिस बुक टुगेदर.
I would also add that, for example, we know about Ram Janmabhoomi, but we don't know Ashok Singhal ji's and Morpan Pingle's role in the Ekatmata Yatra. You have an article about Meenakshipuram, which led to a huge outcry and huge shock for Hindu society, which was channelized into Ekatmata Yatra, which resulted in stopping the conversion drive, which was started by, in this case, Muslims, and also church is very active for a long time. So these are also issues which people should remember, how historically these things have actually turned around. Since we're talking of Mathura these days, today also there is a problem there. Many people don't know that the first resolution about the Hindu temple was in 1950s by RSS on Kashi Vishwanath temple. It was not a Ram temple. So that issue is there. Whichever issue RSS has picked up, those issues have remained in the limelight, and they have slowly been resolved. So with this initial introduction, I would like to begin with Ram Janmabhoomi. You have talked about in fact, Goswami Tulsidas. And Goswami Tulsidas is the actually epitome of bhakti. And epitome of what Prabhu Ram became in the people's mind is much to do with Swami Tulsidas' writing. Then on, there has been continuous historical coverage of Ram Mandir, right from Baba's attack, or rather his chieftain's attack, and the current situation. And you have covered many aspects of that. So as a onlooker, how do you look at Ram Janmabhoomi movement starting somewhere in 83, 84, and how it has come up? You have covered some aspects. So as an onlooker, how do you summarize this entire movement?
See, I think, no, to begin with, you talked about Goswami Tulsidas. So there's another interesting fact. I also used to think that, we have this story कि वो अपने पत्नी के प्रेम में इतने पागल थे कि रस्सी समझकर सांप को रस्सी समझा और चढ़ गए और पत्नी ने उन्हें झाड़ लगाई और फिर वो चले गए, उनका हृदय परिवर्तन हो गया. ये these are the kind of fault lines which were created. Goswami Tulsidas was actually, I would say, one of the most understated and undervalued and under-talked, under-discussed reformers of medieval period. He was an expert in Sanskrit, but he decided to write Ramcharitmanas in the local dialect so that it could reach millions. He was the one who actually started the akhadas in that part of the country. आज जो आप अखाड़ों का पूरा कल्चर देखते हैं वो गोस्वामी तुलसीदास ने स्टार्ट किया. The Ramlilas were started by Goswami Tulsidas. He had set up a large number of temples. और वो temples जो है वो, so all these things basically put together, and single-handedly that person was doing that. And when the Mughals were there, so I would say that I think his Pavan Verma has written a book on Ramayana, but I think the Goswami Tulsidas role needs to be reassessed, and I think justice needs to be done to him. I couldn't do it much justice to him, I would say, in say about 2,000 words. So it needs at least 2 lakh words. And one is that. Second is that if you ask me how I look at the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, I would say that actually it's very interesting that most of us think that between 1528 and 1983 not much had happened. But there was,
I forgot to add that you have written a book on it actually. So
so there was a consistent effort, and I could understand one thing from this whole what I have written on Ram Janmabhoomi. And if I look at the Ram Janmabhoomi, the Ram Temple issue, it's the biggest proof of that it's because Hinduism is here, or because Hindutva is here, or because this country has majority of Hindus. That is why you have a bustling democracy here. Because see, in 49, when there was this Prakatikaran of when the idol had manifested itself. So after that, Hindus were 85% kind of 85% at that time. Today also around 82%. Anytime they wanted to take away Ram Temple, and they demonstrated it. There was a small demonstration of this capability of Hindus which happened in 1992. Many people term it as a black day or this thing. I think it was a manifestation of a slight थोड़ा शौर्य और पराक्रम का हल्का सा जो है वो संकेत था. और जैसे वो रामधारी सिंह दिनकर ने कहा है ना कि क्षमा शोभती उस भुजंग को जिसके पास गरल हो, तो ये सिर्फ एक हिंदू समाज ने ये दिखाया था कि गरल है हमारे पास, तो हम चाहते तो ले सकते थे, लेकिन we waited till the Supreme Court gave the decision. उसके बाद भी सबको ऑन बोर्ड लेने की कोशिश की गई जो है, उस दौरान भी जो है. So this is, I would say, it is not only the longest battle in terms of जो है कि ये कोई longest battle सिर्फ इस मायने में नहीं थी कि जन आंदोलन चल रहा था, ये longest legal battle भी है. बिकॉज 1858 में अगर मॉडर्न टाइम में आप देखें तो 1858 में पहला केस जो है 1850s में 54-55 के आसपास, और पहला ऑफिशियल जो उसमें मुकदमा जो है 1858 के आसपास का, 1885 के आसपास का नहीं है जो ज्यादातर लोग मानते. तो ये एक दूसरी बात कि राम जन्म एक आरएसएस के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ आरएसएस आई वांट टू से दिस, see, many people consider that it was a movement which was created by RSS, which was generated by RSS. No, I would say that the society had decided that we had to basically, launch this movement. It was just that they trusted RSS to lead it from the front. So they handed it over. And in RSS also, they always say that RSS only basically conduct shakas. And whatever is the mood of the society or whatever is agenda of the society, so RSS basically tries to follow that. And that's why, we have so many unsung heroes. And I think I want to especially remember, on 6th December today, the Kothari brothers. Because at that time, we were growing up and there was a lot of outrage in 1992 on 6th December when this demolition happened. But earlier in 2 years ago, Kothari brothers were killed in cold blood. Two brothers, the only two children of parents from Calcutta who had come to perform Shila Pujan, and they were shot dead at point blank range by the security personnel at the order of Mulayam Singh Yadav, who was the chief minister at that time. And they have the audacity, today to conduct Hanuman Chalisas, and it's sad. It's a sad. I think that's why also this history needs to be, and especially I want to remember and recall, Kothari brothers, क्योंकि उनको याद नहीं हम लोगों ने बहुत ज्यादा किया इस पूरे जब जो है जब राम जन्मभूमि का निर्माण शुरू हुआ है दोबारा, तो हर्ष और उल्लास है. पर मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे लोगों को then you had a warrior sadhu about which I have talked. तो ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं कि जिन्होंने एक बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई. जो है मुझे लगता है कि अगर हम अब ये जो राष्ट्र निर्माण, जो एक राष्ट्रीय स्वाभिमान का प्रतीक राम जन्मभूमि का मंदिर है, मैं उसको उसी तरीके से देखता हूँ. मैंने इस किताब में लिखा है और मुझे लगता है संघ भी और वो जन आंदोलन भी इसीलिए था. इसका कोई पूजा पद्धति से या धर्म से उस तरीके से had nothing to do with the religion. So it was restoration of the national pride. ऐसे में जिस तरीके से हम आजादी में जिन लोगों ने अपनी जान गंवाई उसको याद करते हैं, आई थिंक वी नीड टू रिमेम्बर दो. एंड हिंदू सोसाइटी हैज दिस टिपिकल हैबिट ऑफ फॉरगेटिंग इट्स हीरोज. सो वी मस्ट रिकॉल पीपल. 92 को हम जब याद करें तो हम 90-91 को हमें भूलना नहीं चाहिए, जो है, क्योंकि 92 जो हुआ उसकी नींव जो है वो 90-91 में रखी गई थी.
और हमारे यहाँ पर एक शाखा जिसका नाम कोठारी बंधु शाखा है, और इतना ही नहीं तो मुझे लगता है कि वहाँ का अयोध्या के एक सड़क का नाम भी कोठारी बंधु के नाम पे रखा जाने वाला है. और मुझे लगता है कि अनजान हीरो, अनजान क्रांतिकारी अपनी जगह वो भी ठीक है, लेकिन हम भारतीय होने के नाते ऐसे लोगों को स्मरण करते रहे भी आवश्यक है. I would also like you to talk a little about Ashok Singhal ji, who was the architect of this entire Ram Janmabhoomi movement, with the backing of very, very, I would say, very intelligent and very street savvy and very much a person with ground to the people's reality, Morupan Pingle. You have not written an article about him, but I'm sure you know about him. And we, of course, had the fortune to actually talk to him and meet him. And he was the one behind all this strategy. And Ashok Singhal ji was there with converting those ideas onto the street. So I would like you to talk a little about Ashok Singhal ji and Morupan Pingle.
See, about Ashok Singhal ji, it's very interesting because he was from Prayagraj and very close to the fourth Sarsang Chalak Raju Bhaiya. And he was a metallurgist.
I may add that actually he was taken to Shakha by Raju Bhaiya.
Yeah. So, and he was a metallurgical engineer by profession. And both the brothers, he and along with his brothers, so both of them were, kind of, they had joined RSS at initiated by Raju Bhaiya. But the important thing is, I think, the confidence in RSS to hand him over, to draft him to VHP and to hand him over. Because I'm going to talk about the facts about which generally people do not. So the RSS got this, or the organization got this confidence, because what happened in 1981 when the Meenakshipuram incident had happened, when in Tamil Nadu, around 800 Dalits had been converted to Islam. And then an organization by the name of Virat Hindu Samaj was set up, which was headed, interestingly, by a Congress stalwart, Dr. Karan Singh, and the general secretary was Ashok Singhal ji, who was Prant Pracharak of Delhi RSS at that time. And they successfully organized the Virat Hindu Sammelan in Delhi first, where around 5 lakh people came, and then rest is history. So apart from that, and this was also one of the trigger points of the Ekatmata Yatra, this whole episode, and the way I would say he cut across. There is another person whom we must remember, that is Bhaurao Devrasji. So, this troika of Bhaurao Devrasji, Moropan Pingle, and Ashok Singhal. So, these three were a formidable. They're cutting across party lines. There was no leader they were not connected to. There was nobody. They were like Ajat Shatrus who had no enemies.
True.
And Moropan Pingle, I would say, an ideal, pracharak about which people even don't know. As they say in RSS, the pracharaks are postcards without address. So, Moroban Pingleji, the way he strategized the whole thing while remaining in the background. And I remember, though it is not documented officially, but I was told by one of the senior RSS functionaries that when Moroban Pingleji and Ashok Singhal when they thought that, okay, the Sangh needs to now, take a lead in this movement, or Sangh should join the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. So then they spoke to Balasaheb Devras, and Balasaheb Devras said that, and what a foresight he had, I could say. Vision. He said, it will take minimum 30 years. Are we ready to? Because if once Sangh takes up this thing, then we'll take it to the logical conclusion. And that means taking away a lot of energy and resources away from, and time away from doing our organizational work. And mind you, at that time, when we were talking about 83, RSS was not as big as it is now. And Congress and left were very, very formidable, and they were absolutely basically anti-RSS mode, and they had joined hands together. So, this was the situation, and that time, when the organization was at the cusp of taking a big leap. So, despite rather than being selfish and increasing its own expanse and footsteps or footprint, I would say, it decided that, okay, because the society wants it, so we need to go into the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. And I think one of the key reasons that Balasaheb Devras gave a go ahead and decided that, okay, Sangh will take up this thing, was because of his confidence in leadership of Moropan Pingleji, and aided by, very capably by Shri Ashok Singhal, and, guided overall by Bhaurao Devras. So I would look at it basically. So these are the people who, made this happen. I think they would be looking up from heavens and, must be very happy.
I'd like to add a little bit of information on this because it's not covered in your book. One is that I was present in one of the meetings where Moroban Pingle had come to talk about the Ekatmata Yatra. And there is a truck with the Ganga Jal, and there is Bharat Mata Murti, and you're supposed to take out a procession, and they will stop at some place. People will come and collect Ganga Jal, and they will worship the Bharat Mata, etc. And Swayamsevaks or Karyakartas were not confident. They were trying to find small places where they could hold that particular meeting because they didn't know how many people will come. So Moropan Pingle said that Ekatmata Yatra होगी, सफल होगी, आप उसका भाग बनोगे कितना, ये आपको निश्चित करना है. That when I talked about ear to the ground and understanding people's psyche, that is the beauty of the intelligent mind, the high social quotient of people like Moropan Pingle. And I might add, he was one of the first Swayamsevak, Dr. Hedgewar from the first Shaka. And we will now move on to another important event that has happened today, to the personality, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who had visited RS Shaka, who had his views on RSS. And interestingly, one of the persons you have described, Dattopant Thengdi, he worked with Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar for nearly 4 years during his last years in life, and was his chief polling officer during Bhandara by-elections. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's, I would say, read on the Samaj, because there are a lot of people today in the social media, very purist, who try to deride Dr. Ambedkar's contribution to the society. They equate Dr. Ambedkar with casteism, etc. But how do you look at Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's contribution to Sanatan Dharma, to the nation, and what he thought about RSS?
See, I think one is, I'll start with the last question. I think he had a very high opinion about RSS, because when in 1930s he visited the RSS Shaka, and so he was very impressed, because at that time that was probably, he could see that there's no untouchability, and it was being practiced, it was not being preached. So I would say a little bit, I would get critical, like when Mahatma Gandhi, probably Congress didn't had it in it at that time, or whatever the reason was. But like all the Congress leadership, it was preaching that okay, and especially Mahatma Gandhi, there's nothing wrong in it. But the thing was put into practice and without much ado by the RSS. So I think that was one of the high points. And second is that if you would see that, in fact, it is the RSS which has carried forward the legacy of, in a way, both Ambedkar as well as Mahatma Gandhi. Ambedkar's legacy, in the sense that it is truly actually talking about Samajik Samrasya, which is social harmony. So, and RSS has a specific vertical for that, and they were actually working right from the beginning for Samajik Samrasya. And so sometimes, people ask that how many lower caste people, or how many, backwards, or how many Dalits are there in the RSS at the senior hierarchy of this thing. The RSS has basically challenged this binary way of looking at basically, things ki aap upper caste ke, aap lower caste ke, no, it's basically the whole Hindu society is one. So Samajik Samrasya in practice, because I'll share only two basic practices of RSS. One is that nobody is called by the surname. So if I am a Samsevak, and if I meet Ratanji, so I might not know throughout my life what was the surname of Ratan Ji. Then another thing is that there is a common eating this thing, because you have this culture of Savoj, what they call, or Piti Bhoj at times. So everybody gets food from their home, and right since childhood. And I have mentioned, I think, in one of the articles here, but Balasaheb Devras, how RSS has been practicing it. Balasaheb Devras, when the RSS had started, so I think it was in late 1920s or early 1930s. So he had invited some of his friends, and he was very young at that time. He had joined RSS Shaka as a kid. So he had invited some of his friends for taking food at home. So now, Nagpur, Brahmin family, and the kind of atmosphere it was there. So he told his mother that, and it is on the record, that I want all my friends to be treated in the way I'm treated, and nobody should bother about the castes or this thing. So this is another significant thing. Not only I am practicing it, I am also making people around me practice it. And finally, if you look at how the biggest, I would say, one of the defining moments in the RSS history is the Vasant Vyakhyan Mala of 1973. When Balasaheb Devras, after taking over as the third RSS Sarsang Chalak, so he spoke there, and everybody should read. Those who want to, who cast any aspersions on the credentials of RSS from social harmonies perspective, or from caste discrimination based perspective, they should read those Vasant Vyakhyan Mala speeches, where he said, with a famous quote, that if untouchability is not the crime, then nothing is crime. So I think there has been a consistent effort of this thing. So
talk about the lecture. Before you continue, I'd like to just add that actually we though quote only 2 lines. If you read the entire lecture, it's one of the best speeches written by any political leader, spoken by any political leader. The way he creates the argument logically, when his whole lecture flows through those pages, it is magical. The way he has brought out the entire argument is very unapologetic. He's very much aggressive about stopping this caste system, and also how historical was built up. He was not at all shy of talking about what was wrong with our society. So it's a classical lecture. It must be read. I think it's available on the net. It's not very big. There is booklets also. So everybody should read. That's my view. So please carry on.
Yeah, and it's also available in my book, The Untold Story of RSS.
Okay.
So I've given the complete English this thing of the lecture. Coming back to this thing, and now Thengdi ji and Ambedkar. In fact, Thengdi ji wrote a very beautiful book on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and it's based on, and it is not only hagiography. It's kind of a great documentation, and I consider Thengdi ji to be one of the few original thinkers in this country, which this country has produced, especially over the last 70-75 years. So it's amazing the way he has written on Dr. Ambedkar. So I would say, actually, and the contribution of, as you rightly said, I think, there is a problem, Ratanji, we have in our public discourse. I don't know how much you would agree or disagree. The problem is that कि या तो हम लोगों को भगवान बना देते हैं या हम लोगों को शैतान बना देते हैं. हम इंसानों की तरह किसी का असेसमेंट नहीं करते हैं. See, these were complex personalities. On different issues, they sometimes change their stand also depending on the circumstances, and those were very volatile circumstances. We are talking about 1940s, inching towards independence, partition का जो है वो pressure पड़ रहा है. Then such a huge country, and the Britishers had literally paupered us out in every term, in terms of self-esteem also. So ऐसे में और इतनी diverse country के बीच में जो है उसको इतनी रियासतों का, so very complex situation. And then why do we forget that at the end of the day, I know I might be trolled for them, they were all politicians also. So they had to do their politics for them was serving, for them was basically a tool for serving the nation. लेकिन हमने देखा ना 1930s में जो है, जब सुभाष चंद्र बोस जो है चुने गए अध्यक्ष, तो किस तरीके की पॉलिटिक्स हुई उनको हटाने के लिए. तो मतलब वो लोग देशभक्त भी थे और वो लोग श्रूड पॉलिटिशियन भी थे. ये बात हमारे को स्वीकार करनी चाहिए और उसमें कोई गलत वो नहीं है. You look at personalities like Churchill, you look at personalities like Eisenhower, you look at any such historical, आप अब्राहम लिंकन की पर्सनालिटी कोई देख लीजिए जो है, तो ये जेफरसन को देख लीजिए आप जो है, थॉमस जेफरसन को. सो दीज आर वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स पर्सनालिटीज. इनको एक ही खांचे में वो कर देना जो है वो ठीक नहीं है. एंड Ambedkar's views about Islam, Ambedkar's views about fundamentalism in Islam, about पाकिस्तान, ये सारी चीजें जो है ये बहुत सारा जो है वो आरएसएस और उनकी सोच में जो है जो एक समानता थी उसको भी दिखाता है. मुझे लगता है कि अंबेडकर का कंट्रीब्यूशन हम सिर्फ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तक बांध के रख देते हैं. आई थिंक हिज कंट्रीब्यूशन इज मच मोर. बेसिकली ही वाज नॉट ओनली अ लीडर ऑफ द बैकवर्ड्स, ही वाज अ थॉट लीडर. वी हैव टू लुक एट हिम. इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि उनकी भी जो लिगेसी है उसको ठीक से जो है वो असेस जो है वो नहीं किया गया. और उनकी लिगेसी को अगर ठीक से असेस करना है तो उनके आसपास के ऐसे लोगों के माध्यम से उनको देखना होगा जिनके बारे में हम नहीं जानते, जैसे दत्तोपंत ठेंगड़ी की हमने बात की है. तो उनके नजरिए से जब आप देखेंगे तब आपको जो है वो पता चलेगा कि उनकी पर्सनालिटीज के वो पक्ष पता चलेंगे जो हमें अभी तक पता नहीं चलता.
इनफैक्ट जो उनके इकोनॉमिक थॉट्स हैं, जो उनके उस समय के इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन के थॉट्स हैं, लेबर लॉ के बारे में थॉट्स हैं, और इनफैक्ट अगर लोग भूल जाते हैं कि उन्होंने जो इस सनातन धर्म के लिए किया, जो उन्होंने सनातन धर्म के बाहर का पंथ चूज नहीं किया. उनको इस्लाम के लिए बड़ा लालच दिया गया, क्रिश्चियनिटी के लिए बड़ा लालच दिया गया, लेकिन उन्होंने बिल्कुल साफ तौर पर मना किया. उसके बारे में उन्होंने स्पष्ट कहा भी कि क्यों मना कर रहे हैं. तो इस प्रकार का नेता, और जिसने खुद अपने जीवन में इतनी कटुता सही हो, यानी अगर उसका चरित्र कोई पढ़ेगा तो मैं मानता हूं कि पूरे विचार उनके चरित्र को पढ़ने के बाद हमारे बदल जाएंगे. हम में से उनमें 10% भी ऐसा अपमान नहीं सह सकते जो उन्होंने सहा. इतना मुझे अचीव किया. एक गरीब परिवार से उठा हुआ एक बालक जिसको लोग घर में घुसने नहीं देते थे, जिनको मंदिर के बाहर भीगी बारिश में छोड़ दिया गया, जिनको पूरा इतने विद्वान होने के बाद सरकारी अफसर बनने के बाद में उनको प्यून फेंक कर फाइल देता था, पानी नहीं मिलता था स्कूल के अंदर. ये सारी बातें कुछ भी हम समझे तो हम समझ पाएंगे. इतना होने के बाद भी उन्होंने अपना सनातन धर्म नहीं छोड़ा, उसी के अंदर रहे, जिसके कितना बड़ा समाज के ऊपर ये उनकी एक ऋण है, ये हम समझ नहीं पाते हैं. और इसके अलावा उन्होंने जो गलतियां बताई आज हम मान रहे हैं, उसके अंदर जो उन्होंने कमियां बताई हर रिफॉर्मर बताता है, और निश्चित रूप से उन्होंने जो विश्व के बारे में जो कहा, हर बात के लिए हमको उनकी हर पहलू को देखना चाहिए, मैं मानता हूँ। और उन्होंने जिस प्रकार से 370 के बारे में कहा, जिस प्रकार से उन्होंने रिजर्वेशन के बारे में स्पष्ट कहा, उनका एक बड़ा अच्छा वाक्य है जिसमें उन्होंने कहा संविधान बनने के बाद कि आज हम सामाजिक समता की बात कर रहे हैं इस संविधान के द्वारा, लेकिन आर्थिक समता भी गई नहीं है। तो पॉलिटिकल समानता से कुछ नहीं होगा जब तक सामाजिक समानता नहीं आती। अगर ये हम नहीं कर पाए तो ये आगे जाके बहुत एक संघर्ष का कारण बन सकता है। और उसने ये भी कहा था कि जो संविधान जिस काम के लिए बना है, अगर ये काम नहीं हुआ तो मैं संविधान जलाने वाला पहला व्यक्ति होऊंगा। ऐसी स्पष्टवादिता जो उनकी थी और क्लैरिटी थी इसके बारे में, ऐसे नेता हमें चाहिए, ऐसे हमारे दिशा दर्शन के लोग चाहिए। और इस प्रकार मैं मानता हूं। तो आप अंत में कुछ अपनी पुस्तक के बारे में कहना चाहेंगे और कुछ आज बताना चाहेंगे जो लगता है कि इसके बारे में आप चाहते हैं कि लोग पढ़ें या जाने, तो कृपया आप बता सकते हैं।
देखिए, मैं इस पुस्तक के बारे में सिर्फ एक ही चीज बताना चाहूंगा। इसमें कुछ एस्पेक्ट ऐसे हैं जो हम किस तरीके से पूरी दुनिया के अंदर नैरेटिव की लड़ाई हारते हैं बतौर देश, और हमें दूसरे देशों से क्या सबक सीखना चाहिए, वो एक बहुत जरूरी चीज है। मैंने इसके अंदर एक छोटा सा उदाहरण, एक पीस लिखा है चाइना के ऊपर, 2-3 पीस हैं। जैसे मैं आपको एक ही लाइन में बता देता हूँ कि एक तो ये है कि एक तो बड़ा पीस है कि किस तरीके से चाइना ने नैरेटिव हमारे खिलाफ पूरी दुनिया में बिल्ड किया। हम यहाँ पर भले ही हकीकत फिल्म बना के ये सोच रहे हो कि हमने अपना विक्टिम कार्ड प्ले कर दिया है, लेकिन सच बात यह है कि पूरी दुनिया में 2018 तक एक नेवाइल मैक्सवेल की किताब थी, उसके कारण सिर्फ यही नैरेटिव बना रहा कि इंडिया ने फॉरवर्ड पॉलिसी अडॉप्ट की थी।
बता दूं, ये लेख का 9 नंबर का लेख है, साइनो इंडियन बैटल ऑफ नैरेटिव्स, मैक्सवेल वर्सेस लिटनर। ये पेज 55 पे इनका आर्टिकल है
जी,
इस पुस्तक के अंदर।
धन्यवाद जी। तो ये आप पढ़ेंगे, बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग होगा कि एक एंग्लो ऑस्ट्रेलियन जर्नलिस्ट ने चाइना के फेवर में नैरेटिव बनाया और एक स्वीडिश जर्नलिस्ट ने उसको नैरेटिव को तोड़ा इंडिया के पक्ष में, और भारत के अंदर जो है वो किसी ने कुछ नहीं किया इस मामले में जो है। तो ये एक बड़ा संकट का विषय है कि ये सवाल ये नहीं है कि कांग्रेस की सरकार थी, बीजेपी की थी, इसकी थी, उसकी थी। एक पूरा तंत्र है देश के खिलाफ एक नैरेटिव बनाने की बात है, और हम ऑब्लिवियस हैं उस चीज से कि पूरी दुनिया में जो है 62 की वॉर में हमारे खिलाफ नैरेटिव जो है 2018 तक चलता रहा, जब तक बर्टिन लिंटनर ने ये किताब नहीं लिखी। दूसरी चीज जो है वो ये है कि एक जो रतन जी और हमारी अक्सर कई बार इस विषय में चर्चा भी होती रहती है, और ये बात सही है कि हमारे को एक समाज में जिसको हमारी सेल्फ एस्टीम को लगातार कम करने की, कि हम शौर्य और पराक्रमी नहीं है, हम तो बड़े दब्बू हैं। तो जब भी भारत और चीन संबंधों की बात होती है, मैं दर्शकों को बताना चाहता हूँ कि हमें सिर्फ 1962 की लड़ाई के बारे में बताया जाता है। 1967 में एक और लड़ाई भी हुई थी जिसमें भारत ने चीन की खूब पिटाई की थी, और इट हैड टेकन इट्स रिवेंज। और फैक्ट ये है कि उसके बाद चीन ने आज तक हमला इसलिए भारत पर नहीं किया, जो लिमिटेड वगैरह तो ठीक है, बट प्रॉपर जो है जंग इसलिए नहीं छोड़ी। द रीजन वाज द 1967 वॉर। सो यू मस्ट रीड अबाउट दैट, देयर इज अ स्मॉल चैप्टर इन दैट। और तो ये इतिहास के ऐसे विस्मित अध्याय हैं कि 67 की वॉर में आई एम श्योर बेसिकली, क्योंकि जब मैंने रिसर्च करना शुरू किया तो मुझे भी नहीं पता था इसके बारे में। एंड देन देयर इज अ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल बुक ऑन दैट 67 की वॉर पे जो है। और एक मैं अंतिम बात ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि देखिए, मैंने जो रिसर्च की है, मेरे को जो किताब लिखते अनुभव हुआ है, इस पे भी हमारी और रतन शारदा जी की बड़ी चर्चा होती रहती है। और खासकर जो राष्ट्रीय विचारों के लोग हैं, हमारे हमारा जो खेमा है उस पर बड़े आरोप ये लगते रहते हैं कि हम ज्यादा पढ़े लिखे लोग नहीं है। तो मेरा एक आग्रह है, जो खासकर युवा हमारे ट्विटर पे और सोशल मीडिया पे और सब एक्टिव रहते हैं, सारी जान किसी को मैंने कोई बहुत ओरिजिनल रिसर्च नहीं की है इसमें, मैं साफ बात ही कहता हूँ। पर यह है कि हाँ, मैं एक विषय पे 4 पुस्तकें पढ़ता हूँ, उन पुस्तकों में कोई बिब्लियोग्राफी या रेफरेंसेज है उनको देखता हूँ, फिर ओरिजिनल रेफरेंसेस को देखता हूँ, तो चीजें आपको मिल जाती है। फॉर्चुनेटली इंटरनेट पे बहुत सारी पीडीएफ में भी आपको जो है फाइल्स मिल जाती हैं, जो लेजिटिमेट पीडीएफ फाइल्स हैं, जो है इंटरनेट आर्काइव पे आपको बहुत कुछ मिल जाता है। तो आप इसको पढ़ें, अपने इतिहास को पढ़ें जो है, और बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग इतिहास है। और सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि वी नीड टू मेक हिस्ट्री वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। हिस्ट्री का मतलब जो है, एक मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि हिस्ट्री इज नॉट अबाउट मैप्स, हिस्ट्री इज अबाउट चैप्स। तो जो है वो इतिहास जो है वो व्यक्तियों के माध्यम से, उनके जीवन के माध्यम से जो है वो उनको थोड़ा हम देखने की जो है वो कोशिश करेंगे, थोड़ा रोचक भी होगा। तो मुझे लगता है कि आप अगर किताब पढ़ेंगे और इस पे जहाँ पे भी आपको ये लगे कि कोई तथ्यात्मक गलती छूट गई है तो उसकी जिम्मेदारी मेरी है, और आप जरूर पॉइंट आउट करें उसको। मुझे उम्मीद है कि किताब आपको पसंद आएगी। एक आखिरी बात, मैंने जो है 30-35 के करीब इसमें चैप्टर्स हैं, मैंने हर चैप्टर को 2-2.5 हजार वर्ड से ऊपर कोई चैप्टर नहीं है। और किताब इतनी कोशिश की है कि रोचक बनी रहे, एक शॉर्ट स्टोरी है हर एक अपने आप में। तो आप अगर कहीं भी जा रहे हैं और ट्रेन में या बस में आप बैठेंगे तो 2-2.5 घंटे में आप किताब खत्म कर सकते हैं। आई हैव ट्राइड टू कैटर टू एवरी एज ग्रुप इन दिस थिंग, कि उसमें 8 या 10 साल का बच्चा है उसे भी इंटरेस्टिंग लगे, और अगर कोई 80 साल का बुजुर्ग है तो उसे भी अच्छी लगे। सो एंड आई वांट टू थैंक रतन शारदा जी जो है। हम लोग ये भी एक अच्छी बात है, जनरली एक लेखक दूसरे लेखक को प्रमोट करता नहीं है या उसकी किताब, पर फॉर्चुनेटली वी हैव एंजॉयड such a wonderful, such a cordial relationship, and I think I really cherish
नहीं, हमारा
this
ध्येय है कि ऐसी neither you nor I, you at least had a career in media, no career in media. I started writing only because I wanted to convey something and to present the facts to the people. That is the reason I started writing. So I had no life as a journalist, as a writer till I was 50-year-old. So that is how things are. I would also like to say that he talked about the book. In fact, I would say being a collection of good articles, it is a book which you can read also in leisure with a limited sense of focus, where we lose focus very fast because some WhatsApp alarm has just suddenly rung or some notification has come. So even if you read one article at a time, you will still be able to read a book in a very interesting manner and very easily, and remember those things, underline those things. And as I said, if you find anything interesting, go ahead and do yourself. Who will do it? So my view is that who else but we ourselves will have to research, to write books which tell our story. Nobody else is going to do it. There may be a litmus somewhere, but ultimately it's our nation, our society, our issues about which we must write and we must say. And lastly, Arunji, any new book that is undercover right now?
Yeah, it is undercover. My next book is coming out on Taliban. The title is Taliban: War and Religion in Afghanistan. So I have
Wonderful.
tried
You have
to,
written a series of articles which were
yeah,
very hard, very well researched, unknown facets of those. So now that is coming in a book. Wonderful.
yeah,
They'll be able to understand, because we only know some people on the TV screen. We think this is Taliban, but actually it's a very long history, how it was brought up and who are the people behind it. So look out for that also. For the time being, do read this book, and this book about the forgotten history of India, or as I said, the unopened page or the hidden pages of history, which will give you a true idea what our society is, what our nation is, and what RSS is, and who are those people who have given their lives unsung, unheard, because that is that they wanted it to be. But now it's our duty to bring those beautiful lives out in the open and let people understand there are such people who think nothing for themselves, who work for the society without expecting any return, any reward, any name. And these are the people on which this nation was built right from pre-independence day struggle to today. Thank you so much. And
thank
we will
you.
be tomorrow having very interesting session about the Russia, India, US love-hate triangle with Sushant Sarinji, and we will try to bring that complex issue in a easy manner, and that's tomorrow. So we hope to see you again. Thank you, Arunji, and we hope to see you again very soon with the new book.